Begin the current Daf and Mesech is Yevamos Daf. Hey, begin on the top line of the Yomim, where we continue the discussion in the previous Daf, which we're in the middle of exploring the whole concept of our opening of our paragraph Mesech of the 15 women who are the Arayas that exempt themselves and their tzaras from Yibum Chalitza. And we said that we know this from the source of Aleha. So the Gemara was like backtracking, saying, why do I need a pasuk of Aleha to tell me this? Why would I have entertained to say that you could do Yibum with an erva? There's an isser of karis, of having a relationship with an achais isha, with a bita. So the Gemara says, I would have said, asay dechalois asay. So the Gemara says, wait a second. First of all, where do you get this idea of asay dechalois asay? And second of all, even if you would find the source, who would say asay dechalois asay bekaris? And that's our Gemara found the source. Gemara is going to continue and saying, well, that source is only according to one Manda Amar. How can you say that even according to a different Manda Amar? Ashur's corresponds to today's Daf. Something that's discussed in today's Daf is, like we said, a continuation of the sugya of aseh aseh, the dechalois aseh, that a positive commandment can come ahead and override a negative prohibition, and possible sources of this halacha. Mitzayra, which is that of a person who has a white patch on their skin, and then they have to go through a purification process of a week, and then they have to cut off all their hair, and then we're going to discuss that as it relates to aseh dechalois aseh. Shatness is the isser, like it says in the Torah, Silba shatness temer pishim yachta. One is not allowed to wear a garment that's a mixture of wool and linen. So our daf, like we said, continues because in the previous daf, we brought a source for us as which was, it says in the Torah, Silba shatness temer pishim yachta. It talks about this of climb, and then the next pasuk says, Gedilim taslach. You should make strings, alar bekamas kasus chashat techasba. So the Gemara told us that the psukim are smuchim, that you're allowed to put on woolen tzitzis onto a linen garment or vice versa, because the mitzvah saseh of tzitzis overrides the lois saseh of shatness. That was the source the Gemara brought. Now, our Gemara continues and says that that's only according to the Tana of Rabbi Shmuel. We discussed at length in the previous daf that the word semer or pishtim yachtav would be mufna. Why? Because we already know the definition of shatness, because of a garment is called a beged, and beged, he tells us, always means semer or pishtim. So we already knew that the halach of shatness is for beged, which is semer pishtim. Why do you say the word semer pishtim yachtav? Oh, the word semer pishtim are extra to tell you the smuchim with Gedilim Taslach. But according to the Rabbanan, that Semer Pishtim Yaakov is not mufna, because when it says in the term Beged, they don't say it always means Semer Pishtim. They don't hold like Tana Rabbi Shmuel. So then you wouldn't know that shatness is specifically for Semer Pishtim. So you have to say Semer Pishtim Yaakov, so it's not superfluous. So according to them, you don't have a source to say that we said when you say smuchim is if you have muchach or mufna. It's like, meaning if it's extra words, so why is it near this pasuk to tell me you make a drasha? So I would tell you the halach of climate says, but according to Rabbanan, it's not extra. That's how our Gemara continues with that theme as we continue on the top line of Daf Hey. Says the Gemara, Teinech l'tan Rabbi Shmuel. Okay, fine, you found me a source for aseh dechalois aseh, according to the Brisa of Rabbi Shmuel. Like we said, because the words semer pishtim are superfluous, because you already know that climb is with beged, and beged means semer pishtim according to Tana Rabbi Shmuel. But according to the Rabbanan, that they don't hold wherever it says in the term begadim means semer pishtim, wool and linen. So therefore, you need semer pishtim by shatness. It's not extra, because you needed to tell me that the halach of shatness of climb is specifically wool and linen. So manolahu, where did they get this idea that asay is deicha alois asay? You cannot have it from the halacha that's near Gedilim Taslach to tell you climb tzitzis, because there's no extra words to tell you that that's going to mean as a drasha. So the Gemara has to find a new source for asay deicha alois asay according to the Rabbanon of the Tana Rabbi Shmuel. Says the Gemara nafkul meroisha. We're learning out from an extra word roisha. What is this talking about? The Tana learned of Raisa. The pasuk in Vayikra is told about by the Mitzayra, who has a tzaras, a negav tzaras on his body. When he finishes purifying himself, the halacha in the pasuk says Yigalech as kol sa'arai. He has to shave off all his body here. Now, obviously, your head is part of your body here. So therefore, says the Brisa, when it says in the pasuk that on the seventh day he's going to cut off all his hair, and it says Reisha is going to have to cut off the hair on his head, and it says on his beard, and his eyebrows, and all the hair he's going to have to cut off. And then he washes his garments and he goes into the mikveh, and then he's pure. Matam alaymer. Why does it have to say Reisha? You already said Kal Sa'ara. You already said all his body here. Oh, it says the Rice, I'll tell you why. The feature, because there's a different pasuk in Yikra, different mitzvah. It says Lo Yisekifa Pas Reish. We all know this as what we call our payas. You're not allowed to shave off. You're not allowed to go all the way around and do like a crop haircut, like a mushroom, and cut off all the hair all around because you're going to be cutting off the corners of your, what they call the sideburns, you're going to cut off the payas. Okay, Sheman Yaf Mitzarkin, based on that pasuk, I would think a Mitzayra is the same thing. I'll shave off the payas. That's where to tell you, no, yes, all his body here, including his head, which means the payas. So that's what the pasuk is coming to tell you when it says the word Reisha. Moreover, the Gemara has to qualify for Kasabar Haitana. This Tana that needed Reisha, that you needed to override the negative prohibition of not cutting off the payas, obviously this Tana had to hold that Hakaf is colored Shma Hakafa. That cutting off all the hair in the head is considered going around. Hakafa means to go around, that's essentially what it is. It's like you're cutting your hair all the way around and not leaving, meaning from the forehead, which is no hair, you're going all the way around, getting to the forehead, which is cutting off the payas. In other words, what the Gemara is addressing is that there is an opinion that holds that the issur of cutting off the payas is only if you're cutting off only the payas. But if you cut off all the hair of the head, that would not be considered issur of violating the payas. On that, we're saying that no, this Tana would hold that it's not only the payas that the Torah says is forbidden, it's even if together with all the hair of the head, there would still be a violation of cutting off the payas. So therefore, if we wouldn't have had an extra word Rosh by the Mitzayra, I would have thought to say, you can't cut off all the hair in the head, because even the cutting off all the hair, you're still violating the issur of cutting off the payas. No, Rosh Zok, the Mitzayra is allowed to cut off his payas. Okay, but one thing we see is that Asiyah say the positive commandments of the Mitzayra of Vigila Cheseroishoi is overriding the Loisa say negative prohibition of Loisa Kifa Pasroishem. Oh, so from here we learn out that Asay is doif the Loisa say. Okay, therefore you need a leha, if you recall from a prior daf, to tell you that it's an issur to do yibum with an erva, because you would have thought to say that the mitzvah say of yibum would override the negative prohibition of a chaysisha. So therefore, we'll explain that even by lois shesh bekaris, but that's a second question the Gemara has. But at least you see asay ducha say by the mitzayra, the mitzvah say bigalechas kol sari overrides the lois as of l'sikiva pastration, which again is even if you're cutting off all the hair in the head, that's still the issur of cutting off the payas. So the Gemara doesn't like this source. The Gemara says ikla mifrach. You can still refute this limud because mal alav da'kafa, the negative prohibition of cutting off the payas. That's a negative. It's not a universal negative prohibition because women don't have the issur of cutting off payas, like the Gemara says in first Perek Kedushin of Haman Haman Beis. A woman could go and shave off all her hair on her head, including the corner of her by her sideburn, by the ears. So how are you going to say regarding the negative prohibition of a chais isha of the arais of the chamish esin nashim of our Mishnah? Because there, just like the man is prohibited, so to the woman is prohibited as the sister-in-law. She's prohibited also because it says on the fasha says, which means whoever does the erva, both men and women, they all have the loisa say. So maybe when do you say asay dechalaisay? Shema chalaisay. It's not a universal loisa say. It's only for men. But a universal loisa say, like a chaysisha, who said you would say the asay of yibum would override it, that I would even need a leha to tell you that you cannot. Because again, Aleha was the source. It says Aleha by Chos Isha, it says Aleha by Mitzvah Yibum, just like Aleha by Yibum is B'makam Mitzvah Yibum, so to the Isra of Chos Isha, we say Yibum B'makam Mitzvah Yibum. Why do I need that? Why? Because I would have said, where do you know this from? From Mitzvah? You don't see that. Mitzvah is not a universal, therefore it could be Daicha, but who would say that it could be Daicha, a universal Leisa say? So the Gemara says, you're right. Okay. So Ella, rather, we're going to learn it out from somewhere else. We're going to learn it out, Asim Mizakane. We're going to learn it out from the word zikane. What is this? The Tanya learned the Braisa. That same pasuk that talks about the Mitzayra, it says zikanai, his beard, which is matam alaymer. Why does it saying his beard? But it already says kol sa'arai, which again includes not only the hair on the head but also the hair on the chin. So why is it teaching? What's it teaching? It says the Braisa lefisha because the pasuk of the Yikra. Now this pasuk is by a kohen mitzayr. Now Tais Yeshanim asks, why are you picking this pasuk by kahanim, which we're actually going to reject it because it's Torah by kahanim. Why didn't you say the pasuk below Sashches is pasuk zekancha that it says by a regular Yisrael? So he says because by a regular Yisrael it doesn't say anything about giluach, about about shaving it off. But Kahanim says giluach, so then we pick that pasuk because it says explicitly this, that we're talking about shaving off the hair. So leave it as it may, we're talking about by the kohen mitzayra, the halacha, the pasuk says in Yikra, that it says the corners of their beards. We know there's different corners of the beard that forbidden to use a razor. You're not allowed to go ahead and cut it off. Now, Shame'ani, so I would understand if kohen mitzayra came. A kohen that's a mitzayra would also have that same halacha, that just like a regular kohen is not allowed to shave off, he's not allowed to use a razor on his chin. So to kohen mitzayra cannot shave off the hair of his chin too. Tamalim is zikanai. So what do you need zikanai for? To include even the beard of a kohen that's a mitzayra, that the asay is deicha delais asay. Now, the Gemara continues like this. Now, if it wouldn't be teaching me anything regarding a non-universal isser, meaning a negative prohibition that does not apply by all, because it's obviously only by men, and actually this isser per se is actually only by kahanim. So I don't need you to tell me that asay is deicha because that I already knew from Reishai. Reishai already told me that when you have a lavshe in the shalom b'koil, that the mitzvah of mitzayra cutting off his hair is going to be deicha that. So I already know that from Reishai. Why would I need Zekani to tell me? Oh, Zekani is coming to tell me it's coming to apply even by a universal negative prohibition that still it would go ahead and override it. And that's the source that you see asay deicha to say. And therefore you need a leha, again, to tell me that you're not going to do that by the mitzvah of yibum. Seemingly because, you already know Reishai for lav shen shabakol, so although really Zekani is also a lav shen shabakol, it's only for kahanim, which are men, but I don't need you to tell me that. So why am I telling you that? Oh, to tell me that in general, I would tell you even by a lav shabakol. Says Yevamos, no, Bakati Itzach, you still need it for it itself to tell you that the negative prohibition of cutting off the corners of the beard of kahanim, that we're going to be doichet. Because actually you would not know it from Reishai. Why? Isn't it also a lav she'in shava b'kol like by Reishai? Says the Gemara, no, but still, you would have thought to say shan the kahanim are different, meaning the negative prohibition that relates to kahanim that are more severe. Why? We know there's many more mitzvahs that apply to kahanim than to a regular Yisrael, and therefore even a non-universal lav, meaning the kohen cutting off his beard, I would have thought to say that loy dachi. What do you mean? Why not doich? I already know lav hashem shalom b'koil. The say of mitzayra is doich of the lav of, let's say, cutting of your payas. So why would I say that the lav hashem shalom b'koil of cutting the beard would be different? No, I would say that you cannot be doichet. Why? Because it's a kohen. A kohen is very severe. A kohen cannot just his avodas of amochamer. Kamash malan the dachi. Therefore, I needed to tell you that no, it's going to be doichet. But still, I don't have a source for lav hashava b'koil that it's a universal lav. I still don't have a source that I say can be deicha. Alois I say, and Allah has come of a kama regarding the erva of our Mishnah, which we're coming to discuss. That's a lav that has karas. For sure, I wouldn't know that I say of yibum would be deicha, that I would need a leha to tell me that you cannot do that, which is the whole sugya we're going through in East Blatter. Sailor rather says Gemara a different source. Asim Reisha dehach tana, meaning the same word Reishai. We're going to stay with this, but it's a different brisa that expounds in a different way. Meaning we tried darshaning from the word Reisha from a previous Tana, who was saying it's coming to teach me regarding a regular mitzvah with his payas. This brisa sometimes discusses the difference between these two different Tanoim. This brisa is going to darshan it differently, and maybe that could be a source. Tanya will end the brisa. Reisha matamalayma, meaning when it says Reisha by mitzvah, what do I need it for? The same question the previous Tana had asked. It says kol sa'arei, so we know it means all is here, including his head. Says the Brisa, I'll tell you what. Then it says a pasuk in the midbar regarding the nazir. The nazir says tar lo yaval reisha. A nazir is not allowed to cut off his hair. Now, shemei neaf mitzayir v'nazir kain. So I would understand. Let's say he's a really complex individual. He's a nazir, and he has tzuras. So he's a mitzayir, and he's a nazir. So I would think, although the mitzvah, when he purifies himself, is supposed to cut off all his body hair, just one of these individuals that have no hair, these guys, they cut off everything, right? But he can't, because he's a nazir. And a nazir is not supposed to cut off his hair. That's the isser of a nazir. So I would say he can't cut off the hair. No, it says that when the mitzvah, cuts up all the hair on his head, is to say, even though he's a nazir, he's going to cut off the hair on his head. Now, one thing you see is the asay of the Roshai of Metzayra is deicha the loisasay of a nazir taking a razor and cutting off hair from his head. Now, although you're right, the isser of a nazir cutting off his hair is obviously not a universal law. Most people are not nazirs. But if it's not teaching me something regarding a lav she'ena shavbakal, because you already know that from the way the other Tana expounds Roshai, that's what Rashi says it. So therefore, you can apply it to a lav shavbakal, even though it's a lav she'ena shavbakal. But says the Gemara, no. You're right. Although that seems to be a good source that the asay of Yigalechas Kal Sa'ari overrides the loisase of Tarli Yavel Roshai, which is a lav shavbakal, which either you could take because Nazir applies to all, or like Rashi makes it sound like that, even though it's not applying to all, but ultimately you wouldn't need it for lav she'ena shavbakal. Either way, it would seem to be a good source for asay d'chaleis asay. Says the Gemara, ikla mifrach. No, there's a flaw in that teaching too. Why? Because malam nazir mitzayra. What are you going to tell me about a nazir that's a mitzayra? That yes, the asay of the mitzayra cutting of his hair is going to override the negative prohibition of his nasiris, which is a universal lav, or at least it'll tell me regarding universal lav. No, but sheken yeshna b'she'ela. That lav is a very weak lav. Meaning the lav of a nazir cutting of his hair, you can't tell me that regarding asay could be deicha, even a regular lav. Why is a lav of a nazir weak? Because it could be annulled. You can go to the Chacham and say, Chacham, ani mevakesh, it's very difficult for me, I can't. He says, oh, because it's a neder naziris. A neder could be matir the neder. So that's why Tashach lav, that's why it could be deicha. And says the Gemara, I'll prove this to you. Because the ilat tamach, if you don't say this, that is a leniency in the halacha of naziris as a negative prohibition, then hadek come on this that we know the rule is. Although a positive commandment can override a negative prohibition, it cannot override something that is a negative prohibition and a positive commandment. But why? Ligma min nazir. Why can't you learn from nazir that it could be? Why? Because Rashi says a nazir has a asay and a loisasay. The loisasay is tarli aval roisha. You're not allowed to put a razor on your hair. You're not allowed to cut off your hair. And it also says kadosh yigodol pena, that you should grow your hair. That's a mitzvah. And still mitzvah is doicha. The loisa seva say of cutting off his ear. So why wouldn't you learn that from there that you could be? So what's the pshat? Why don't we learn from Nazir? Very simply, because you could refute it and say sheken yesh mishayla. It's not a good source to everywhere else. The loisa seva of Nazir is very weak because he could go to the chacham and he could be matter for him. Also, for regarding what you're trying to learn it for, you could also ask sheken yesh mishayla, because you could ask regarding the naziris, and that's what that say is deicha the loisa. But you cannot learn out in general for the conceptual understanding that I say could be deicha loisa from that of Nazir. So El rather says the Gemara La'ilam, the truth is, as we go to continue Talmud Beis, says the Gemara, it's mikro kama. Let's go back to the first pasuk that we said in the previous daf of Klayim Batzitzis. And we have two psukim, one of Shatnez, right next to the pasuk of putting on tzitzis. Now, you had told me in the beginning of this daf that according to Rabbanan, you don't have any extra words of Tzemer Pishtim, because they don't know from the word beged, because they don't learn beged means Tzemer Pishtim like Tanur Bishmol. And so we said, according to them, how you know Clemens is permitted that to say asay is deicha the leisa, say that asay of tzitzis deicha leisa of Kalayim? Says the Gemara, no, it's not true, because im kain, if there were no extra words, then lema krod tzitzis tasalach. Then you should have said that you should make tzitzis. Gedilim lamali. Why did you use the word gedilim? Shma mino lafnuye. Obviously, he's coming to tell me that those are extra words. That by the way, saying the word gedilim, and that is teaching you. Oh, now you already have alafnuye, which once you say something that's unnecessary, that tells you. So then, okay, why is it here? It's telling that we said the two criterion of darshaning smuchim is either muchach, which is like what's it doing here, or afnuye, these are extra terminologies that doesn't need to be said. So why are you changing the word to gedilim? To let me know that I should darshan smuchim. So even according to Rabbanon that don't know from the next word Tzemah Pishtim, but they know from the word gedilim. So even according to them, that could be the source of a seder chalese from that you could have klayim by tzitzis. Says the Gemara, no, the Gemara rejects many of these interpretations. The Gemara says, no, this gedilim is l'shiur hudasa. It's actually coming to tell me the measurement of how many strings you're supposed to have on each corner of your garment. How so? So the Gemara explains. If all you had was the word gedil, that would mean shnaim, that would mean 2 strings, because as Rashi explains, you cannot make a gedil, a twine, less than 2 threads. So when it says gedilim, which is plural of gadil, that's arba'ah, because that's 2 times the 2. So that would, because since gedilim is plural, the least you could have in plural is 2, times the 2 of a gedil is 4. Now, as Rashi points out, the pasuk says Mamid b'tezvav and nosnu al tzitzis hakanaf. You're going to put onto the tzitzis of the corner of the garment psil. Now, psil is a singular. You're going to put the thread. So, what is the Torah telling you? The Torah is telling you, asay, make from these 4 strings gedil 1 twine, which is going to be 8 strings when you stick it into the corner of the garment, and then upeislei mitaychai, which that's the word of psil, besides, meaning the word psil also means and, from inside, meaning you should be hanging these strings, which takes to discuss it from Rashi exactly the parameters of what this is, but it shouldn't all be gedil. We know that our tzitzis are not all just twined. There should also be some of it what's called branches coming out, which is we don't have it just wrapped around. It comes out. So it's like a third, 2/3 about how much is wrapped together and how much is coming out. Al kapanim, one thing is that the word gedilim is not an extra word. Only Kritis said tzitzis. No, gedilim teaches me actually how many strings and then how the actual construction of the tzitzis are made. So the Gemara says, oh, okay, but I'll tell you other words that are possibly extra. Im kain le makra, the pasuk should have said, leisil b'shatnes semer pishtim. Don't wear shatnes, which are wool linen, but yachtav lamali. Why do you have to say the word yachtav? And there's all there in that pasuk in Mishnah Torah, which you're trying to find how even according to the Rabban you'll have extra words. According to Rabbi Shmuel, we said the word extra words at semer pishtim. So according to the Rabban, that's not extra because they don't know from the word bagid. So I'll find you other extra words, and then that's how you'll darshan smucham of aseder chalaisei. What do you need the word yachtav together for? Says Gemara, no. The shmamin lafnui, obviously that's extra. Tell me aseder chalaisei say that the climb could be done with tzitzis. Says Gemara, no, but that also is necessary because that teaches us l'taikiv shtei tekifa is that only if you put in the needle 2 times, that's a chibur. That makes the wool connected to the linen. But tekifa achas and a chibur. Sticking it 1 time is not considered. If you stick in the needle 1 time and you connect the climb of the woolen garment to the linen garment, that's not going to be considered connected less than 2 sticking ins of the needle. And that's why it says yachta until you really connect it very well. So yachta is not an extra word. I needed to teach you the halachic criterion of that pasuk of climb. So the Gemara continues, oh, okay, well, I'll tell you a different shot. It should have said there in that pasuk, don't wear wool and linen together. Shatnez lamali. What does the word shatnez teach me? You already tell me wool and linen together. The word shatnez is extra to teach me this halacha of aseder chalaisei of climate tzitzis. So well, no, you need that too, because the word shatnez is actually a compound of 3 different words, which are actually halachic requirements for the issa of shatnez. It's ashehei, and this machlekes Rashi says how to translate this, but the way Rashi says ashehei shua, until it's smoothed, tavui, spun, venuz, and woven, which that minatayra, you're not going to be chayev until the wool and the linen are totally finished, like combed out, and gone through these 3 processes. So that's going to make it into shatnez. So of course I needed the word shatnez, or else I wouldn't have known these 3 halachic requirements for the issa of climb. Ella rather says the Gemara, kula mishatnez nafka. Actually, you learn it all off from the word shatnez. What does that mean? Because Rashi explains, if the word was only going to be extra, then they should have said leisil besh klayin temer peshta. But the fact that the Torah used the word shatnez, you also darshan shoy tov v'noz. So you learn that both from it. It's an extra word because you didn't have to say it. You could have just said, if all you wanted was extra, you could have said klayin. But why, when you said the extra word, did you say shatnez? To tell you shoy tov v'noz also. And therefore, that's the source for this halacha that, according to everyone, you're going to know aseder chalaisei say from this word of shatnez, which is both an extra word, and in the way you said it extra, you also said it in an interesting word to teach you these 3 requirements of shoy tov v'noz. Says the Gemara, fine. This finishes stage one of our inquiry. Fine, you found me a source that a positive commandment of tzitzis will override a negative prohibition according to everyone from this halacha of klayim b'tzitzis. But you still have the second question. But a negative prohibition that as a punishment of kares, that you get, if someone violates it, he dies young. Where do you ever find that would be doicha the itzur halel l'meisa that we needed a leha to say to prohibit a yibum with an erva? You don't know. You only know by regular loisase. Who said it would be doicha loisesh b'kares? That I need a leha to say that in this loisesh b'kares it's not going to work. Says the Gemara. Now the Gemara tries to attempt stage two to find asay doicha even loisesh b'kares. What do you mean? Learn from the mitzvah of circumcision. You do a bris milah on Shabbos. Shabbos causing bleeding. There's a loisei sheish b'kodesh is Shabbos, and the mitzvah's milah is doicha. Says no, you can't bring a riot from milah. Mala milah shekin nichus ala shloisha tzibrisas. In the parasha by Avram Avinu, the parasha of milah, it says there's 13 covenants. There's the word bris says 13 times. So therefore it can be Deicha Shabbos. But a regular mitzvah say, who said that we be Deicha, let's say just because. Says the Gemara, okay, maybe mi Pesach. A person could slaughter his carbon Pesach on Shabbos, if it's Erev Pesach, even though shechting is a deraisa that has karas. You see the mitzvah say of Pesach is Deicha. Says, no, come on, Mala Pesach should get karas. The mitzvah say of Pesach itself, if you don't bring your Korban Pesach, that is also a violation of Karas. One would die young for not bringing his Korban Pesach. That's a pretty heavy mitzvah say. Maybe that's Deicha Leish B'Karas, but a regular mitzvah say, who says it can be Deicha? Like a mitzvah of Yibam, if you don't do Yibam, you don't get Karas. You don't bring Korban Pesach, you get Karas. So who said the mitzvah is like a regular say would be Deicha Leish B'Karas? You can't bring a raya from Pesach. This is something about Mitamit. Let's bring a raya from the daily sacrifice. Every single day in the Beis Hamikdash, we know they brought a daily sacrifice in the morning and the evening, which even on Shabbos, as we say in davening by Musaf, we say that Tamidim Kisidrim, Mesofar Kochasim, every single day, including Shabbos, you brought a tamid. Now that's Issa Deraisa of shechting, all the malachas that they did there on Shabbos is a listish b'karas of Shabbos, and still the Asay of tamid was overriding that. Says Gemara, yeah, but Mala Tamid Shekin Tada. How can you prove that the tamid, the daily sacrifice, is constant? It's consistent. That has something that gives that's a very important mitzvah say. But a regular mitzvah say, who said it'd be there? Listish b'karas. Okay, says the Gemara, fine, you're right. You can't learn that from one of these variables. But Tesi Mitarti, maybe learn that from two of them. Says the Gemara, meaning because each one has its own stringency, fine. But maybe altogether, you could have from two of them and show that that's not the primary criterion because that one doesn't have that one, and maybe from the common denominator you could learn that. Says the Gemara, Mehite, so which one you can learn that from? If you're in the same Milu Pesach, you can't bring a right from them. Shekain Kars, both of them. If a person doesn't get his bris milo or doesn't bring his Korban Pesach, there's a punishment of karas, which you don't have by a regular mitzvah say. Let's say you learn in Pesach with Tamid. No, shekin tzarach gavaya. Both those are things that are necessary for Hashem for the mizbeach. What are you going to say regarding mitzvah say of Yibam, which does not have all these criteria? Or what are you going to say Mila with Tamid from learn that from the common denominator of bris mila and the Korban Tamid? Shekin yesh lefnei hadibur. But those two were before even Matan Torah, which, as the Gemara explains, Valibad Mandam, this is going according to the one that says in Chagigat Avav Menalef, that earlier Shekrivi Soba Midbar, that the carbon oil that the Jews brought in the Midbar, like it says in Shemais Chavdal Bayalo Oilas Tamid Haba was a carbon Tamid. So Tamid and Mila were both before Matan Torah. So those are very heavy mitzvahs to say. Who said you would say regular mitzvahs to say? And even says the Gemara Mekulanam, even from all three, from Mila, Pesach, and Tamid, you wouldn't know it. Because Shekin Yesh Lefnei Adibra, all three were before Matan Torah, before Hashem spoke to the Jewish people. So therefore, again, that shows how important they are. So maybe they could be Deicha Leish B'Karas. Who said a regular essay would be Deicha Leish B'Karas? So Ella rather says the Gemara, Itzrich. I'll tell you why you need a leha. Again, as you recall from the prior daf, that it says a leha by Chaytzisha, it says a leha by Mitzvah Yibam. To tell you, just like the Mitzvah Yibam, the word allow is when there's a Mitzvah Yibam, so too when it says the Isra b'Chaytzisha, which we learn all our rayas from B'Chaytzisha, that you cannot do it even b'makom mitzvah yibam. The question what we were saying was, why do I need a leha? Why would I think that you could do a isra of an erva of a chesisha to go ahead and become mitzvah yibam? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. Because you would have thought to say that if it doesn't say a leha, it's a drasha, that Tasi you would learn out that a say is deicha aleisa shesh b'karis. From where? From honoring one's father and mother. Why? What do you see? This is the time like learn the Brisa. The Brisa says as follows. Yochel, and here it's actually from the Yochel. Yochel yehei kibbut avim derech Shabbos. You would think that honoring one's father and mother is derech Shabbos. If a father says, I want you to do this, very important mitzvah kibbut avim, that you could be mechal Shabbos for that. Tam 11 says in the pasuk, ish imei va'av turo. No, it says a man, his mother and his father he should fear, and then the pasuk says, v'esher b'sayse tishmayru, and my Shabbos is you should safeguard. What's that teaching? That kulchem, all of you, your father and your mother, are all chayav mechvaydi. They're all obligated in my honor, which Rashi says we learn that from the words ani Hashem. That I don't care about what your parents told you. I say not to be mechal Shabbos, says Hashem, and therefore you have to listen to me, not to your parents. Now, my love, says the Gemara, isn't it even talking about Damali, where the father said to the son, Shachli, I want you to slaughter an animal for me. Bashli, I want you to cook something for me. Which that would be an av malacha, that if one would do it, be chayav kares. And says the Gemara, the time of the Kaz Rachman Hashem says Shmairu, and it's only because the Torah says, keep my Shabbos. Halav hachi. If you didn't have a pasuk, what does it sound like you would say? Dachi, it would be daicha. You tell me a pasuk that says you can't do it. How would it be daicha? It's a saseh of kibbut avim being daicha a lysish because of cooking on Shabbos. So you see a source that generally, unless you have a pasuk otherwise, you would say I say daicha lysish because. Says no, that's not a good raya because if you think above med aleph, we're talking about lav de mechamer. We're talking about the negative prohibition of mechamer. Mechamer means that if someone is leading, let's say a donkey that's laden with the packages, and he's going after the animal, having it drag it in Rosh Hashanah and doing malacha, that's a negative prohibition that it says in the Torah in Shemais Chav. Now that is a lav without kares. Why is there no kares? I thought Shabbos you get kares for. Yes, because he didn't do anything by himself, as the Gemara says in Shabbos Kuf and Dalam and Aleph. If someone's mechamach behemta b'Shabbos, he's part because I didn't do anything. I'm just leading my animal, but I didn't do any work myself. So that maybe is what the father said. I want you to do this mechamer. That's for saying, no, don't listen to him. But not that if without the pasuk I would have said that you would have thought I said leisish b'kares, because it's not a leisish b'kares, it's a regular lav. Says the Gemara, wait a second, the Gemara doesn't like this answer. So wait a second, so you tell me the pasuk is telling me that even if the father is telling you to do machamer, to just a regular lav, not kares, because you're not doing anything on Shabbos, you're just having the animal go out, I need the animal to go out, it tells you, don't worry, Shulchan Aruch this is what I want you to do. Tata Zuk says, this is what I told you, I'm your father, you go do this. The pasuk is telling you, no, don't listen to your father to be violating this regular law, not Sheish B'Karas, on Shabbos. So the problem is, El Dekai Malon, but this that we know the rule is, we know generally a positive commandment overrides a negative prohibition. What do you mean? We should learn from this pasuk that Asay doesn't override even the regular lav. Because what are you telling me the pshat in the pasuk is not of a lesser b'kares? You tell me it's talking about a regular lav. So you see that kibbut avim is not going to override even the regular lav. But I thought Asay is the chalei. And b'chitim, if you're going to tell me, oh, no, shani lavi the Shabbos. No, you can't bring a raya because the Isra on Shabbos is the Chamiri. It's more severe. As the Gemara tells in Erevin of Samach Tesam Abayis, Machal Shabbos is like doing Avodah Zarah. And therefore, even the regular lav, the mitzvah Aseh Kibbut Av is not going to override. But you can't learn out from there that Aseh is not der Chalei. Maybe generally Aseh could be der Chalei. Says the Gemara, no, don't tell me that teretz, that's why you can't learn out. Why? Because Vahal, we find in general the Tana Ba'al Makai, there's a Tana who's learning out other lavim. Like for example, the lav that a kohen should not make himself tummy. Or the lav that a person should not turn the blind eye of returning someone's lost object. And they learn it out from the lav of Shabbos as a chumrah. How could you learn that from Shabbos? A chumrah, if Shabbos is more chumrah, you can't learn out chumras to other halachas like a Shabbos Aveda or a Tumah B'Koyin. And V'loika Baruch, the Gemara doesn't ask and say, wait a second, you're comparing Shabbos Aveda to Shabbos? What do you mean Shabbos is more chumrah? We don't find them ask. Therefore, that refutes your premise that you're trying to tell me that, no, you can't learn out from Shabbos. Shabbos is more chamer. Maybe that's why I say it's not degulis. It's not true. It's not like learn the Brisa. The Brisa says, Yachol, you would think, Amalei Aviv. If let's say the father tells his son, the Kohen, Hitami. It says, I want you see that scene that someone lost something over there? I want you to go into the cemetery and return it to that guy. Which kind is forbidden to become Tami. Or let's say, actually, that they were standing outside. Sha'amalai, and the father tells him, no, Al-Tavs, don't return it, even though he's not going to become Tami. He's telling him, don't return the lost object. Yochli, Yishmala, you would think you're going to listen to your father. Talmud it says in the pasuk, Ish, imevav to know, yes, a man has to fear his father and mother, but Veshab says to Shema, you should keep my Shabbos. You're all obligated my honor. So what do you see from that pasuk? The Bryce is teaching, we learn out that regarding the Isra of let's say becoming a Tami, or regarding the Isra of not returning someone's lost object, that we learn that from the love of Shabbos, just like you don't listen to your father when he tells you, be Mechal Shabbos, you don't listen to your father when he tells you, go make yourself Tami. Go ahead, don't return this lost object. You don't listen to him. Where are you learning it from? From Shabbos. How are you learning from Shabbos? I thought Shabbos the lav is mochamer, and that's why you wouldn't listen to him. But a regular lav, maybe you would listen to him. Obviously, we don't differentiate. And if we don't differentiate, then we're back to the question. Then, why don't you learn out from mechamer, and that's how you translate in the pasuk, because you don't want to bring me a raya that is aseder chalisa shesh bekaras, and that's why the pasuk is coming to exclude from that. No, you would never say, you don't have a proof that it's a list shesh bekaras, because it could be talking about a lava mechamer, which is only a regular lav. So then, why don't you learn that from that Asay is not Teicha, even the regular Leis Asay, because Mechamer is a Lav grade and don't tell me the Shtikl Torah that Shabbos is Mechamer, because you see other places that we don't ask such a question. Sailor rather says the Gemara, the truth is, the father is telling the son, cook for me, slaughter for me. Which, seemingly, you'd be able to prove from there, that in general, without the pasuk excluding, that you would be able to say Asay Derech Leis Shesh Bekaras. No. And still, I would not need a leha, meaning I still have not found myself a source. Why you need a leha? Why not? Isn't this a great source? You see that without the pasuk of kulchem chayav mechvaydi, I would have thought that you would listen to your father and cook for him something on Shabbos, because the mitzvah say of kibbutz avim is doichad lois sheish bekaras of cooking. No, because mishum dikla mifrach, you could still refute this, because malahanach, if we find by cooking, when the father says cook for me or slaughter for me, Shekein hechsher mitzvah. So big machlokes Rashi says, what does it mean shekein hechsher mitzvah? Almost exact opposite interpretations. Rashi understands that when the person doing the chil Shabbos, when he's uprooting the loisa say of cooking, that same moment he's fulfilling the mitzvah say of honoring his father. That's called hechsher mitzvah, which is usually not the wording it usually means throughout Shas. It means that's the way of being mekayim. And that is, you cannot be mekayim without uprooting the law. So therefore, if not for the Torah saying Yashab Seisei Tishmayu, I would have thought you could be deich, because that's the way of fulfilling the mitzvah. But regarding yibum, no, that's not the only way that you could fulfill the mitzvah, because you could do chalitza. And therefore, who said you could uproot the law of an arayas? So therefore, I still would not need a leha to tell me that you cannot. Because why would I think Meaning, I'm bringing you a raya that says derechalistish bekaras. Really see that? Because the Torah needs to tell me that I cannot cook for my father on Shabbos. I would have thought that I could. No, that's a listish bekaras. Oh, so I brought a raya, say derechalistish bekaras. So that would make sense why I would need a leha to say alpha pikein, even though this sister-in-law, your wife's sister, is an erva listish bekaras. I would think, okay, but yibum overrides that. Because I say that because it says, no, you didn't find me a source yet. Why you need a leha? Why not? Because the mitzvah of cooking for the father on Shabbos is hechsher mitzvah, which Rashi translates that to mean the only way of doing what your father wants you to do, the mitzvah say, is by cooking. That's what he wants. He says, cook for me. I want you to cook for me. That's the mitzvah. So that's the mitzvah. But by yibum, there's two options. Taisa doesn't like Rashi for a few different reasons, but you can do chalitza. So that's not the hechsher mitzvah, it's not the only way of fulfilling the mitzvah. You could also do chalitza. So who would say that I would have thought that you could do yibum, that I need a leha to tell me that you cannot do yibum? I would have thought you could do chalitza. So again, it's still not a good source, the way our daf concludes, that why you would need a leha, because I wouldn't know that you need a leha. I still would not have thought that you could do yibum to tell me that you cannot do yibum with a leha, because it's not the only way of fulfilling the mitzvah. You could do it with chalitza. Again, Tais has a whole different discussion. It actually says that hechsher mitzvah means actually why it's inferior, but that's the way Rashi explains. Thank you to any time.